So we're going to talk about anticipatory grief tonight, but I'd like to start off with a centering meditation. So just to kind of get us all into that relaxed state and to allow us to kind of focus a little bit better and just to be present. So, and just let me know after we do this if this chime is a little bit too harsh. I had a feedback from actually somebody a couple of weeks ago that says, wow, that was a little bit too much. So I love it, but let me know, and I brought another one so we can use that the next time. So just find a comfortable place on your seat. Make sure that your buttocks is supported by the base of your chair and your back is supported by the back of the chair. And if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes and just take a deep cleansing breath. And the next inhalation you take, just allow each vertebrae in your back to slowly rise up. And as you exhale, allow each vertebrae in your back to come down one upon the other so they rest upon your hips. And the next time you inhale, allow your shoulders to come up and around. And as you exhale, bring your shoulders back and down so your shoulders rest upon your hips. And the next time you inhale, allow each vertebrae in your neck to slowly rise up. And as you exhale, allow each vertebrae in your neck to come down one upon the other so they rest upon your shoulders. And the next time you inhale, allow your your head to slowly rise up. And as you exhale, allow your head to come down so your head rests upon your shoulders as well. So you have a relatively straight back. And now just bring your attention to the tip of the nostrils. And again, just take a deep cleansing breath. And exhale. And next time you inhale, see if you can inhale from the tip of the nostrils all the way up to that point between your eyebrows called the eyebrow center. A long, slow inhalation. And then exhaling from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, a long, slow exhalation. Try that one more time, inhaling from the tip of the nostrils all the way up to that point between your eyebrows, a long, slow inhalation. And then exhaling from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, a long, slow exhalation. And just notice when you inhale from the tip of the nostrils to that point between your eyebrows, the breath is slightly cool and dry. And when you exhale from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, just notice the breath is slightly warm and moist. Try that one more time, inhaling from the tip of the nostril to that point between your eyebrows, noticing the breath is slightly cool and dry. And then exhaling from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, noticing the breath is slightly warm and moist. And just know when you inhale from the tip of the nostrils all the way up to that point between your eyebrows, that when the breath touches that point, it actually calms the nervous system, which in turn calms the mind, and in turn relaxes the whole body. So just continue to breathe and relax. Breathe and relax. Now just taking your attention to your diaphragm, the solar plexus, which is just below your rib cage. And if you can inhale into your diaphragm, inhale calmness. And exhale out any anxiety you might be feeling now. Next time, inhaling into the diaphragm area, healing. And exhale out any illness or sickness you might be feeling. And again, inhaling into the diaphragm area, inhale joy. And then exhale out any sadness you might be feeling. Next time you inhale into the diaphragm area, inhale trust. And exhale out any doubt you might be feeling. And the last time into your diaphragm area, breathe in hope. And breathe out any despair you might be feeling. And now taking your attention to your heart area, breathe into your heart area just pure divine love or pure love. And exhale that love out into the world. And next time you inhale into your heart area, inhale into the sides of the heart and allow the sides of the heart to expand. And then exhale out that pure divine love into the world again. And next time you inhale, inhale into the back of the heart and allow the back of the heart to expand. And exhale that out into the world. And lastly, inhale into the front of the heart, that pure divine love, and allowing the front of the heart to expand. And then breathe that out into the world. And one last inhalation, breathing into your heart, all sides, the front, the back, each side, and allow your heart just to completely expand. And then exhale that out into the world. And just taking your attention now to that point between your eyebrows, the eyebrow center, and inhale intelligence to that point between your eyebrows. And then breathe intelligence out into the world. Next time you inhale into that point between your eyebrows, breathe in wisdom. And then exhale wisdom out into the world. And next time you breathe into that point between your eyebrows, breathe in understanding. And then exhale understanding out into the world. And lastly, breathe into that point between your eyebrows, acceptance. And exhale that out into the world. And then one last time, just breathe in this pure divine love and allow it to inculcate every cell in your body as you inhale. When you get to the top of your breath, just pause for a few seconds and allow that pure divine love to inculcate every cell of your body, and then exhale that out into the world. So you're literally vibrating with love and a sense of calmness, a sense of joy maybe. Just continue to breathe and relax. Breathe and relax. And I just ask you to just think, feel, or imagine, or just sense, what is it inside you that is in need of healing at this point? Just notice what comes up for you. Just let it come up into your mind, in your feelings, or in your body. However it comes up is fine, and just take notice. What is it inside me that is in need of healing? And just continue to breathe and relax. Breathe and relax. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes and just allow the light of the room to come in. Bring yourself back into the room. So again, welcome, and wanted to talk about anticipatory grief. So there's lots of different types of grief. We might touch on a couple of others, but So first of all, let me ask, what is grief? What does it mean to grieve? Loss, right? So, and grief, so we experience grief when we have a loss, and we grieve that loss. So what are some of the feelings that come up when you feel loss, when you feel grief? Pain, absolutely. What else?
Sadness.
Beautiful. Sadness. Deep sadness a lot of times, really deep sadness. Anything else that comes up for you? Anger, absolutely. A lot of people feel real anger. Why did this have to happen? Why did I lose that person or whatever it is that you lost? Any other feelings that come up?
Longing.
Longing. Really missing, in other words, and longing for that you've lost. Absolutely, really good, beautiful. Anything else?
Guilt.
Guilt. Right on. There's a lot of guilt. Should have done this, I should have done that. Oh my gosh, right? Yes, thank you. Beautiful. What else might come up?
Relief.
Relief?
Sometimes.
Absolutely. No. Absolutely relief comes up. You know? We can't deny any of these feelings, right? But yes, relief. Anything else?
We say fear.
Pardon me?
Fear.
Fear. Absolutely. Lots of fears. We can go through a litany of fears, but absolutely, thanks. And one more. One more thing that might, there's lots of things that come up, but loneliness, absolutely. It's the whole range of emotions. If we had an emotion chart here, you'd probably say, oh yes, you can feel that, you can feel this, and you can, absolutely, the whole range. So that's the whole point, is that all these things can come up during grief. And just know that grief is a healthy, normal reaction to loss. We need to go through grief because we need to process it. So everyone goes through grief. The question is we all have a different trajectory. Everyone's experience is different. Kubler-Ross came out with these 5, stages of grief. Well, actually, and then somebody added a few more. So there were 7 stages of grief. And what we found is that, yes, people experience different things. They don't necessarily experience all of them, and they don't necessarily experience it in the stage, each stage one after the other. We're all different. But the point about grief is this, is that if you don't process, if you don't allow yourself to go through it, grief is very patient. It will wait a whole lifetime sometimes. I've seen this many times. People who have bottled their grief in, and at end of life, 50 years later, they're trying to process the death of their father, the death of their mother, the death of a child, because they would not allow themselves to do them. And it's really difficult. So the longer you leave it, the harder it is. But just know, grief is patient. It'll come up at some point. Okay. So what is anticipatory grief? What is that all about?
It's anticipatory grief.
Okay, so
Well, you're anticipating that loss, so you're almost pre-grieving the grieving event.
exactly. No, well said. It's really well said. So it hasn't happened. The loss hasn't happened, but I'm starting to grieve. I'm starting to feel that. So what's an example of a loss that hasn't happened that you might anticipate it to happen?
Somebody with Alzheimer's.
Okay, so somebody with Alzheimer's who has it, and you're anticipating the progression of Alzheimer's, you're anticipating, losing more and more capacity, all these losses, and then finally death, right? And you anticipate all this. What other things might you anticipate? And we'll get back to, the aspects of anticipatory grief, but what other things might you anticipate in terms of grieving, in terms of loss?
My mother was 100, and I thought, she's going to die pretty soon. So her old age was, I knew that she was going to die soon.
Right. So anticipating that loss, and of course, there's the negative things that can happen, but there's also positive things that can happen. So we'll go over that in a bit, but it's really important that the concept of anticipatory grief is that it hasn't happened, so it's conceptual. So when you say it's conceptual, it's, I'm thinking about it, all the things that can happen, right? But they haven't happened. Or maybe they're going to happen in a short while, but they haven't happened at that time that you start the grieving. So you start to grieve the loss of your partner, right? You start to grieve that, you know, we're able to go traveling, we're able to do this or that, and now we can't do that. That's a loss, right? But you might be still doing it and think, oh, maybe this is the last time we can do that. Or, you know, when your spouse goes into a care facility, you know, now you're starting, even before they do, you're anticipating that loss. They're not going to be with you anymore. They're not going to be beside you in your bed every night, sharing that same space necessarily. So these things we start to anticipate, and we start to feel these same feelings that we just talked about. You're feeling sad, you're feeling lonely, you know, you're feeling anger, you know, all these emotions come up. Or sometimes you might be feeling relief. You know, it's just, it was too much for me to deal with all of this, and now my loved one is going into a care facility. Maybe it'll be a little bit better, you know. So there's some relief there. But again, everyone's unique. There's nothing that you can say, oh, this is normal, or this is the way it should be. We all experience things differently, and that's the key. And it's really important to be aware of what you're feeling and to have somebody that you can process this with. Don't keep it in. It's really important that whether it's a counselor or a friend or even your partner, you know, in the sense that if they're, you know, starting to progress, that it's really important that you can still talk about this or find a counselor. You know, so it's important to, or a friend, a sibling, or even a child, or whatever, somebody that you can trust, that you can talk and process. It's really important not to keep it in. That's the thing I have to stress the most. Because when you keep these things in, it comes out in something, in an illness, in being lethargic and tired, or anxious or depressed. We all react differently. So if you don't take anything else out of this talk tonight, take that you need to process these things. You need to deal with it, not let it just lie, okay? So when you're seeing that there's some positive aspects to anticipatory grief, what might those positive aspects be? What can be positive about anticipating something that's a loss that could be devastating?
You're preparing for it?
Yeah. So okay, your loved one is going to die soon. What are the type of things you might want to think about in anticipation of that? How would you prepare for that?
Well,
What are their wishes?
Pardon me?
What are their wishes?
What are their wishes? Beautiful. Has anyone ever asked, you know, like somebody, what would you like, you know, as we go through this? That's beautiful, and that's so important. I can't tell you how many times, again, I worked in the palliative care and end of life, and people don't talk about that. You know, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this for you. No, but what does the patient want? Ask that question. It's really important, you know. And what else? What other things might you do to prepare? Some of the practical things.
insurance.
Okay, make sure, you know, look at the insurance. What does the insurance say? What else do you need? Will. Absolutely. Make sure that there's the will and it's, it says what you want if you're the person or your loved one. Make sure that, the right bequests are in there and, the things that you wanted to do are relevant for today. What are the other documents that you need? Personal directive. So, and the personal directive is anything to do with medical decisions and or where you're going to live and who that person's going to associate with. So if I'm no longer able to make those decisions about, type of medication or type of treatment that I'm going to get because I have Alzheimer's or I'm getting to that point where, I just don't think clearly, then I want to appoint somebody who I trust, maybe my spouse, maybe my child, whoever it is, that are going to make those medical decisions and decision of where I'm going to, if I have to go to a care facility, who's going to do that? So that's the personal directive, and it's really important. So that's one thing. By the way, so that's something you can get a lawyer to do, and there's even personal directives online that you can fill out. Okay, so there's a will, there's a personal directive, and there's a third thing, is called a power of attorney. Now, there's two types of power of attorney. There's a power of attorney that you would then appoint somebody to look after your financial affairs, and again, somebody you trust, but it's really advisable if you can appoint somebody that you really trust and do an enduring power of attorney. So the problem is if you just do a power of attorney, it has to be effected when you lose capacity. And I'll tell you, it's a kind of a pain in the butt because then you have to get two medical doctors to opine that this person has lost capacity, and sometimes it's kind of difficult. There's an emergency situation, and you need to take care of some financial thing, and it's better to do it beforehand. So I can't stress enough. If you go to a lawyer, you say, I want an enduring power of attorney, and appoint somebody that you trust. Will look after your stuff, your financial affairs, and be able to go to the bank to pay the bills and be able to, pay out sums, so whatever it needs to be done on a financial basis. So that's something to think about. So anticipatory grief says, do we have all these documents together? Let's get that going. And that actually helps the grieving process because now you're doing something, and so there's that positive side. What other positive things might come about? So you talked about the 5 wishes. But in that vein, let's do, what is it that we really want to do now that we have this time? Because we know whether it's end of life or something's going to happen, let's make the best of this time. So you can use anticipatory grief to say, okay, what can we do now to make sure that we've taken advantage of the time that we have available? Is this a time for family to get together? Is it time for us to go on a trip? Is it a time, to talk to friends? So again, knowing that something's going to happen and not just putting it aside or not dealing with it. A lot of people, that's how they cope. So the advantage is to say, okay, let's take the best use of the time that we have available. So that's another advantage. And what are some of the disadvantages then of anticipatory grief?
It's heavy.
It's really heavy, yeah. And the thing is that you can sink, right? You kind of go down this spiral and you start anticipating all the terrible things that might happen. And you're a lot of people who are experiencing anticipatory grief, and that uncertainty makes it even more difficult because you don't know when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen, and it can consume people, and it's not helpful, right? And a lot of times, people who have experienced anticipatory grief, when the actual loss happens, it doesn't help them to have experienced the grief, and there's a new type of grief now, right? So anticipatory grief can be very difficult as well. Again, and we'll talk about some of the things you can do, but it's really important to process that your feelings and not just let them build. Okay, and maybe this is the point that you need to get a counselor. This is the point that you need to get a therapist. to start talking about things like that. Okay. Oh, one last thing. Sorry, you got a question?
Is anticipatory grief more about death? Like losing a job or anticipating that there's been layoffs at your organization and you're anticipating that yours could be the next one to roll through? There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of things, not the same as death, but
Yeah,
there's a
no.
lot of grief around that.
So thank you for bringing that up. That has to be really clear, that grief can happen on any type of loss. A job, divorce, your pet, losing a pet, or anticipating that your pet's going to die, anticipating that you're going to lose your house, whatever the loss is. And we can't say, oh, suck it up. It's just, that's, it's not a meaningful loss. Everyone experiences a loss differently. And so if the job is your whole life, or, this animal you're very, very close to, or, another, your really good friend, anticipating that could be a huge, could provide a lot of grief. So whatever type of loss it is, yes, you can have anticipatory grief for that. And any type of loss, we need to deal with it. We need to process it. Right? That's really important. So thank you for bringing that up. So I just want to say the conventional grief that we experience when somebody actually dies, when we lose the job, when we've gone through the divorce, the separation, that's reactive. We're reacting to what happened. But anticipatory grief is proactive. It's before it happened. Okay? And the other thing about anticipatory grief is that it's kind of ambiguous, like you don't really know when it's actually the loss is going to happen. So you're kind of in this middle ground, right? And so there's this thing called ambiguous grief, which can be very complicated and very difficult for people. And it's basically, you're in a situation, for example, the event hasn't happened as yet, and it's just incomplete or indefinite, but at some point in time, this loss will happen. And you can't grieve it. I mean, you can't mark the loss, like you can't have a memorial or anything like that, because it's just uncertain whether it would happen or not. And there's a lack of closure. It could last years and years and years, which is really difficult. So that's why it becomes complicated and ambiguous in terms of the grief, because it just doesn't happen. So you're kind of left hanging there, and there's a lot of uncertainty, involved in ambiguous grief, as there is in anticipatory grief. So you're just left in this kind of no man's land, which makes it really difficult to really grieve. Okay. I just wanted to move on to symptoms of grief. We talked about feelings, but what are some of the symptoms of anticipatory grief? Nausea? Some people can get nausea, absolutely. Okay. What other symptoms? When somebody's really grieving, which sometimes you see.
Fatigue.
Fatigue, absolutely. It wears you out. Certainly, that's a good one, thanks. What else?
Depression.
Absolutely. Depression, anxiety, yeah, can really cause depression, for sure. One of the main things is loss of control of your emotions. You just cry all of a sudden, right? You're just really sad all of a sudden. Tears come. That's pretty normal in grief. Okay, so that loss of control of emotions. And you mentioned before anger. So fear, irritability, anger, those are also symptoms, things that happen when we're grieving. The point I want to make is that when we see some of these symptoms, like we might not know, oh, this is grief. When you're irritable and you just, all of a sudden get really upset with something, or you can't control your emotions, you start to cry. You might be grieving. These are signs that, things aren't balanced. Loneliness, somebody mentioned before, isolation. You know, so that's another sign. I'm feeling really, I don't want to be with anybody. I just want to be by myself, right? But then it kind of perpetuates itself. You become more isolated, you become more lonely. So that's another one. And somebody mentioned anxiety, you know, just this heightened feeling of being tense and edginess. A racing heart, you know, if your heart races a lot, that's another symptom. Anything else you can think of?
Sleep issues, eating problems,
Beautiful. Yeah,
headaches.
yeah, absolutely. Phil would know, he dealt with with that as a doctor. And guilt, that's a big one. Somebody's feeling really guilty. So, and also an intense preoccupation with the person who is, especially in anticipatory grief, the person who's dying. Right? Just, you can't leave them alone. You can't give yourself time for self-care. You're just preoccupied with them all the time, and you're doing, you know, trying to do everything, which results in you getting exhausted, you not taking care of yourself, and just making things more difficult. So that's another thing. So, you know, when a person faces grief, no matter what type, it hurts. It really hurts. And it needs attention. So, and I think you brought up a good point. What other types of losses can we grieve? And just that there's a whole range, basically any type of loss. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Loss of companion, you lose shared memories, you lose your dreams for the future. All of these are losses. And I guess the other thing I wanted to point out is that the effects of grief add up. So in other words, you know, you're anxious, you're depressed, you're lonely, you know, all these things, you're crying a lot. So when you have multiple symptoms, it gets more and more difficult. And again, so when you see the symptoms prop up, not only in you, but somebody close to you, you see these symptoms, reach out to them and say, look, we need to get some assistance here. You need to get some help. So it's really important to notice the symptoms, be aware of them, and say, okay, now we're at a point where we need to do something about them. And that's where a therapist or a counselor, or, you know, just somebody that you really trust and can sit down with and really talk. And just know that the grieving process serves a purpose. It allows us to release all these emotions, and so that we can find a new way of moving on. So when you have a loss, everything that was related to that particular loss, so if it's your loved one, all the dreams and the things that you wanted to do are all gone. The person I was, you know, this is part of me, right? You've lost that. And what the grieving process allows you to do is recreate who you are in the end. So we deal with all these emotions, the anxiety, the depression, the sadness, the anger, the loneliness, and then to basically recreate yourself. Who am I now without this person? Who am I now without, you know, my home? Who am I, you know, whatever it is that you lost, you have to get to a point of being able to find that new person that has new inspiration, things that you want to do, things that excite you, and to be able to move on. And if you can't move on, that's what's really difficult. And it may take, some people take months and some people take years. Again, everybody's different. So one of the other things about, I just want to reiterate, one of the benefits of anticipatory grief is that it gives us an opportunity to say goodbye. And it gives us an opportunity, you know, to deal, you know, to be proactive in what you want to do. So that's, to take advantage of that. You know, what are the things that we want to do together? What are the things we want to do with the family? What are the things that, you know, are meaningful? And, you know, what does your loved one want? What are the wishes? really, really important. So, how do you cope with anticipatory grief?
Punching bag is really good.
Sorry?
Punching bag is really good.
A punching bag is really good, absolutely, okay, that deals with the anger, that's a coping mechanism, thank you. What else?
I find the rationalizing challenging, like, why did this happen to me, the victim, like, why do some people have more opportunity to grieve? Like, why do some people have more grief in their life than others? And so I have no clue about it, but I'm just saying that some of it is sort of like, why is this happening? Like, you know, I don't know about your mom, my mom used to tell me, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I go, oh my God. You know, some people have they should be King Kong all right now. They had enough things in their life to, and so I wonder, like, the fairness between, you know, what happens.
So these are really good questions. These are existential questions. Like, what's the meaning of all this? Why this person and not me? You know, and those are the type of questions that spiritual care deals with. That's what I deal with. I love those questions. And they're important questions because you need to find meaning and purpose in all this. And if these are the questions like, why me? Or, you know, why did it happen this way? Or why didn't, you know, it's really important to process that. And everyone's different, and the way I deal with it is everyone knows deep down inside the answers. I don't have to tell them anything. We all know, but sometimes we're kind of, you know, clouded, or our brain takes over, and the rationalization doesn't necessarily help. But if we go into our heart, or we go into our gut, which are also centers of knowledge, the answers are all there. So what I do is work with the person to find their answers to those questions. Sometimes it's not
Can you
easy.
give me an idea? I kind of get what you're saying, but can you go a little further with it?
Well, then we'd have to get into a session.
Oh,
So,
I was just wondering what you would share with someone who's just lost someone who's lost their 3-year-old child. There's no fair, I get it, it's not any easier that your 100-year-old parent passed away, but there's some rationalization
Yeah.
versus your 3-year-old child. So,
yeah, that's a hard one, and that takes a lot of work. That's not going to happen in one session. But anyways, when somebody loses a 3-year-old child, it's then you're just helping them cope in the moment. You're not helping them process it, because that's going to take a long time to process. Okay? But these are good questions, and there's things that need to be asked and need to be dealt with. Like, don't leave them.
As humans, we are always looking for an answer. There has to be an A and a B, or yes or no, or like, why did this happen? That's why it happened.
Right.
We're not like animals, where animals can look at another animal passing away, and it's just part of life.
Right.
As humans, we look at it, and we have that mentality to
Right.
look at it and say, why?
Right.
Why did it happen? And there's not always a consequence.
Yeah. But as humans, we're meaning makers. That's what we are, right? And we're storytellers. And these stories allow us to provide meaning. And for some people, there's a religious answer. And some people, there's more of a spiritual answer. And some people, there's a rational answer or a scientific answer. Everyone's different. So I can't tell you what you should think, but maybe, you know, I can, you know, help you find what makes sense to you. And that's the key. Okay? And I'm going to deal with a scientist a lot different than I'm going to deal with a evangelist. You know? So we're all different in that way, but I think, you know, if this is if you have a certain orientation, you're a scientist, then we have to look at it in a different way than if somebody, you know, has a very strong faith. Okay? Yeah, so the bottom line in terms of coping is just letting yourself grieve, be honest and true to yourself, join a support group. That's a good one. And so the Act for Parkinson's group that I work with, we do have this, I think, really good support group. We meet with the caregivers every couple of weeks. We have different topics. We allow them to create, relationships and friendships among themselves and support each other. So that's a really good idea. Again, we can't do it alone. We've got community. There's resources out there. So to find those resources for support. And say what needs to be said to your loved one. This is an opportunity to really open up and allow your feelings. Like, don't keep things in. And educate yourself. Know what the symptoms are, know what the progression is, know what's going to happen. So that helps as well. And that's one of the things, like in the Parkinson's group that we have, is that we provide that kind of information. And to let people know, okay, this is kind of what the trajectory, and everyone's a little bit different, but at least they have an idea of the different things to expect. Create moments of enjoyment for your loved one, and in the end, these moments might be what you will cherish. So, really important to create those moments. Maintain hope, and prepare yourself for that loss. I think we're at the point where I'd like to just ask if there's any questions about anything that we've spoken about. And when we finish the questions, then we're going to do the healing meditation that I have. And then there'll be time, maybe a few minutes after the meditation, if things come up during the meditation, we can ask a few more questions. Is there anything else that...
What do you tell your people that you counsel if someone's had a lot of grief? It doesn't, like when you never know the amount of grief everybody has.
Yeah.
But some people, you're aware, they've had a lot of grief in their life. And in some ways, it's not really fair. So what's fair? And how do you talk about fairness and grief? Like, did you deserve all that grief and all that stuff?
So it's really important for people just to talk, and we provide space for that. And we learn how to listen really, we do active listening, really intent listening. So again, I would allow that person to talk about all the grief that they've experienced. And when they start talking about it and processing, putting it out into the open starts to transform things. When you keep it in, there's no change. So just the talking really helps people, and talking about every single instances of grief and going through. Who's the person? What's the background? What did you do? What were the experiences you had? And that allows those emotions and those feelings to come out and be processed. It's very powerful. People don't do that. So a really good example, it's kind of like trauma. Trauma, it resides in the body. So when you have an experience where your body can't handle it, you shut down. So we have this window of tolerance that, if it's too much, or we can't deal with anything beyond this window of tolerance, we either shut down or we run and fight or flight, right? So we have different ways of reacting. But the point is that after you react, what happens is that we tend to just leave it, and then it stays in our body. And when that happens, especially if you have what we call mini traumas, you have many instances where your emotions and your ability to handle things have been overloaded. And each time that happens, it actually stays in the body unless you physically remove it. And a good example is, when you see in National Geographic a cheetah running after an antelope, and the antelope runs and runs and runs and runs and actually gets away from the cheetah. It almost died, right? But what it does, it doesn't stop after this trauma. It keeps on running until it dissipates the trauma, and then you'll see it 10 minutes later eating as if nothing happened. We don't do that. We experience the trauma and we stop, and we don't, get it out. So you have to process, or alternatively somatic experiencing. There's ways of actually, through somatic ways, getting the trauma out, especially if it happens immediately. It's really, really, helpful. So the point is that same with grief. If you have all these griefs that you don't deal with, they all reside in the body. So it's really important not to let them build up.
There's a book out there called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And exactly what Rick says is that once they are safe, they shake, they quiver, and they dispel the trapped energy, and then they eat their grass.
Yeah.
But if we were chased by the tiger, it would be, oh my God, I almost got eaten. This is terrible. What should I do? I'm never going to go out there again.
So grief, the way out is through. The way out of grief is that you got to go through it. So that's a quote, I forget where I got that from, but grief is a journey through and not around. Right? Any other questions?
Grief is a tricky one because we often don't want to talk about it. Because sometimes you don't want to talk about the pending event, or other people don't want to talk about the pending event because it's not like you're talking about the birth of a child or something. It's a loss, not a, I guess you could say it's a gain. It's a difficult one to bring up, so it's outward processing is sort of difficult. I don't know, it's not something that's easily discussed.
No, I think that's a really good point, and that's why it's really important to find somebody you can discuss it with. Because to say, there's no one who wants to listen to this, or, is it really fair for me to bring up these things? Well, that's when a counselor or a therapist comes in, somebody completely neutral. Now, if you do have somebody that's close that can hear these things, maybe there isn't, which is probably a lot of the case. That's a lot of the times that's the case. So I encourage you to find somebody, and there's lots of services too that are the province does provide. So grief support, you don't have to pay for that. So if you've just lost somebody, there's the Bob Glasgow Grief Center at the Richmond Hospital, Richmond Health Center over here. There's 6 sessions they provide. There's a number of agencies in town that provide grief support, even for anticipatory grief. You can reach out, I guess I would say, find somebody that you can talk to, but keeping it in is just not helpful. But that's a good point, so thank you for bringing that up. Anything else?
What is the distinction between taking it that much step and not beyond? Like, for example, not making it more than it needs to be. When we talk about this kind of grief, there has to be some kind of parameter, right? Because it cannot just take over your whole life. The person is still there with you.
Right.
And you want to be present.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to just lose yourself somewhere else.
So,
Can you repeat the question?
okay. So, I was going to give an answer. So you're saying there has to be a boundary to what you want to express and say, and you still have the person there, and you don't want to go beyond that. What is the boundary? And I think that's a really good point. Like, it's a matter of, I think, regulating yourself. What do you need? Are you able to contain all of this? We try, but probably not. So it's like a steam locomotive. At some point, you gotta, pull the lever and allow some of that steam, to dissipate, because otherwise it's just going to be too much and the boiler is going to explode. So I think you have to be, number one, you have to acknowledge something's happening. there is going to be a loss, and I'm experiencing that. Number two, it's really important to tell your story. And to tell your story, not to yourself, to some third party. So if you have a loved one or, somebody close or a friend that you can talk to, that's really good. And if not, phone one of these grief centers. And there's ones that, you can actually talk to somebody on the phone right then if it's really serious, or you can make an appointment. So it's really important to do that. Like, don't keep it all in. And then the third point is to release. And that's basically these attachments that you have. Eventually, you're going to have to be able to release those in order to be able to move on to the fourth point, which is finding new meaning, finding new relationships, finding new ways of being, right? So there is that process. So, and with anticipatory grief, the first thing is to acknowledge I have it. The second thing is to start processing. You're not going to be able to make, obviously lose all those attachments because the person's still there, the thing is still there. Whoever you're anticipating a job loss. Well, you still got the job, but there's going to be layoffs, and eventually, you could be the one, right? So you can't necessarily relinquish those attachments you have to the job yet until you actually leave and get that process going. But what I'm trying to say is that there are things you can do, and especially don't keep it in. That's the main thing. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Well, that question about people wondering about their boundary, and how would you find out another person's boundary? Like, let's say they might pass away. So how do you find out what their comfort level is so that you can talk about it if they want to, but you're not like acting like you're wanting to have?
Well, first thing I would do is, if you feel comfortable, ask. Sometimes we're just afraid to ask.
What would you say? How would you ask the question?
How are you feeling? How are you feeling now?
Do you want to talk?
Do you want to talk? Again, each person is a little bit different, how you might approach them, but, I mean, with me, most people I don't know, so I have to develop a rapport first, right? So I get to know the person. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your background. What did you do? Tell me about your family, and now we've got some context. So, okay, how are you really feeling? And then to a point and some people, don't forget, the way they cope is to deny. So they don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. You do what you need to do, but don't involve me. And frankly, there's a lot of people like that. But there's other people, unless you ask them, they're not going to tell you. So that's why it's important to feel them out and say, look at how you doing? Do you understand what's happening? Do you understand the process you're going through? And they might say yes or no. And if they say no, what information do you need now? What would you like to know? and that kind of gives you a sense of, well, I want to know everything, or I really don't want to know. We'll just go along. So everybody's different. You kind of have to feel them out. But that's a really good question. Thank you. It's not an easy one, to figure out. We're complicated, and we're unique.
Can I share something?
Please.
My mom is turning 94, and I'm the middle of 5 kids, and I probably have the closest relationship with her. And so trying to understand what she wants when she passes, initiating that discussion, and making sure that everybody, because we can be quite a contentious bunch of people, knows what our wishes are, and that it's written in a document, and everybody's read the will, and everybody's understands that these are the wishes. And to be fair, I probably bring it to my mom more times than she'd like. She doesn't really want to face it, but for the sake of those of us who are going to survive, I have to ask her. And so it's not every time I get together with her, but it is just making sure that if there's anything more that she wants to add, or probably once a year, I go over it with her to make sure that, we are all going to be okay when she passes, because we know what she wants, and it's clear.
Right. That's great. That's really, I would encourage that. Exactly what you did. Beautiful.
It's not easy. She did tell one of my siblings, Joey's always talking to me about. I don't want her to talk to me about that. So I got the message, so.
Yeah. But if you can, it's really important to, to ask those questions. So, I was just gonna say one thing about, helping somebody approach their end of life. And the key is to be able to find peace. If you can help them find peace at end of life, that's the greatest thing I think somebody can experience, because peace allows for a peaceful passing, a peaceful death. And to have peace, you need to surrender and basically detach from all your attachments. In other words, we have these attachments to our loved ones and to our physical things and stuff like that. And the process is to allow ourselves to detach so that there's nothing that holds us back. The problem is that we have all these things in this lifetime, not just relationships with loved ones and our friends and that sort of thing, but we also have the physical attachments, to the things that we've acquired. The example that I would give, my mom was 94 and a half, she just passed away, and she was very attached to all the things in her home. Like, she didn't want to relinquish anything. And it was very difficult for her, to let go of these things. And we helped her. We had a set of, process stages that we kind of helped her through, where she was able to let go a little bit at a time. And then finally, when she got to that point where she had relinquished almost everything, she said to me, "This is amazing," one day, "I'm ready to go. How do I do it?" Like, my mother never would say that. She'd say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna live, I just want to live. I don't want to leave this world." And finally, though, after she was able to detach and she decided on her own that she was ready to go, she basically went in 2 days. It was amazing, and very peacefully. She was able to let go of everything, and it was just a very quick and peaceful death. I want that.
So Rick, all of us are in denial of the biggest thing, our own death. We're talking about anticipatory grief of a loved one or a loss of something that we see pending. But the ultimate anticipatory grief is our own death.
Yeah.
And so, can you share how we can live and deal with our anticipatory grief of our death that we all deny?
Well, first of all, denial is a great coping mechanism. And most of us are in denial that it's ever going to happen, right? But it's just all the things that we talked about in terms of anticipatory grief. What would you do? Well, number one, get your paperwork done. In other words, get the will and get the power of attorney and get the personal directive. Even if you're 30 or 20 years old, it's worthwhile to have all those things. So you amend them or have addendums as you go along, but that's the first thing. In other words, what can I do now to make things a lot easier? The other thing is live life to the fullest. And in terms of spiritual traditions, a lot of spiritual traditions will tell you, to take advantage of life and to do as much as you can. And when you feel that you've really taken advantage of this lifetime, then I think it's a lot easier in the end. In other words, you don't have regrets. So to do is all the things that you want to do, write them down and do them, like get them done. So you're not at that point, at the end saying, "Oh geez, I wanted to do this, this, and this." No. Have a plan that you can get things done now as opposed to, not doing it. The other thing I think in terms of my experience, I ask people what's the most important thing in their life. This is after they've had this unbelievable career and they've built up, whatever, and done all these things. They say, "My family." And the biggest regret, they say, "I didn't spend enough time with my family." So wherever you are, whatever stage in life, determine what your priorities are. You know, if your priority is relationships and family or friends, like, make sure that's your priority. Like, don't regret, oh my God, I didn't do this. So I think that's the one thing I would say. And then when you get to that point, nearing your end of life, and to be able to say, I have no regret because I've done everything I needed to do, that,
I would just comment, your mother also was very wise. And you think that letting go is the essence of dealing with the denial of death, but not at the end of life,
right.
but right now. That
Right.
letting go is the way to find freedom. What do you think, Rick?
Oh, absolutely. So the more things you can let go as you go along, right, it's just a lot easier. So we become attached to things. I mean, you know, I'm attached to a lot of my physical things, you know, but I've also realized that it's not beneficial in the end to have those type of attachments. And, you know, because if you are really attached to something, you lose it, it really affects you, right? But if you don't have the same attachment, it's okay, let that go. The biggest thing I had to learn is how to surrender and just allow it to kind of go, be in the flow, whatever that flow is for you, and not fight it. And so for many years, I did whatever I could not to go and study to be a rabbi. And I wanted to do that since I was like 20. And I, you know, went into law and I went into business and stuff. And finally, there's a point in my life that I just decided, okay, I'm just going to let it happen. And, you know, I sold my business and somebody said, oh, this is where you should go to study. And I looked into it and that's where I went to study. And like one thing happened after another when you kind of just surrender into that flow. And it's just been an amazing journey. But when I fight it, that's when the problems happen. That's when things don't, you know, come through and you know, it makes life difficult. So I guess that's the other thing I would say is, you know, go in and find out what that true desire is, what you need to do, and, you know, let it happen. Okay, so we'll do the meditation then. So this is a really deep healing meditation, and just to kind of give you, I'm gonna put you into kind of a relaxed state, and there's a prayer that is this is a Buddhist prayer, and it's a prayer of release and letting go. And I'm gonna say the words to you first now, and during the practice, I'm gonna repeat them, and I'm gonna ask you to repeat them in your mind's eye, not out loud, but just in your mind's eye. But you'll know the words now, so that if you're not comfortable with them, you don't have to do that. Okay, and then at the end, we're just going to, again, in this relaxed state, just allow light to come in to heal, and just see what that experience feels like. So the words of this prayer are basically, through your blessing, grace, and guidance, through the power of the light that streams from you, may all my negative actions, destructive emotions, and blockages be cleansed, purified, and removed. May I know myself forgiven for all the harm I may have thought and done, and may I be granted this purification. So those are the words. If you feel comfortable, you can repeat them and own them, and if not, just let it go. Okay, so let's start. So again, just finding a comfortable place on your chair. Can we turn off some of the lights? Is that okay? Yeah. And I brought this candle. It's but yeah, I can't light it because I'm not allowed to have fire here, but you can pretend that there is light coming from it, and it's the shape of a heart. So there's lots of love coming out of this, and it's a Himalayan salt lamp. Yeah, it's perfect. Okay. So again, just closing your eyes, making sure that you're comfortable in your chair, that your buttocks is supported by the base of the chair, your back is supported by the back of the chair, your feet are firmly on the ground, and your hands are resting on your lap, if that's comfortable. And just take a deep cleansing breath. Next time you inhale, just allow each vertebrae in your back to slowly rise up. And as you exhale, allow each vertebrae in your back to come down one upon the other, so they rest upon your hips. And the next time you inhale, allow your shoulders to come up and around. And as you exhale, bring your shoulders around and down so they rest upon your hips. And the next time you inhale, allow your head to slowly rise, your neck to slowly rise up, and every vertebrae in your neck to rise up. And as you exhale, allow each vertebrae in your neck to come down one upon the other so they rest upon your shoulders. And the next time you inhale, allow your head to slowly rise up. And as you exhale, allow your head to rest upon your shoulders so you have a relatively straight back. And again, just allow, or just see if you can inhale from the tip of the nostrils all the way up to that point between your eyebrows, the eyebrow center, a long, slow inhalation. Exhaling from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, a long, slow exhalation. Again, inhaling from the tip of the nostrils all the way up to that point between your eyebrows, a long, slow inhalation. And exhaling from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, a long, slow exhalation. And next time you inhale, just see if you notice that the breath is slightly cool and dry as you inhale from the tip of the nostrils to that point between your eyebrows. And when you exhale from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, just notice the breath is slightly warm and moist. Again, inhaling from the tip of the nostrils, that point between your eyebrows, noticing the breath is slightly cool and dry. Then exhaling from the eyebrow center back to the tip of the nostrils, noticing that the breath is slightly warm and moist. And just know that when you breathe like this, from the tip of the nostrils to that point between your eyebrows, when the breath touches that point between your eyebrows, it calms the nervous system, which in turn calms the mind, and in turn relaxes the whole body. So just continue to breathe and relax, breathe and relax. And now, I'm just going to name a body part. And when you hear that name, just allow that body part to completely relax. So relax the top of the head, relax the back of the head, relax the right side of your head and the left side of your head, relax your forehead, relax your right eyebrow and your left eyebrow, relax your right temple and your left temple, relax your right cheek and your left cheek, relax your nostrils, relax your lips, and just allow your tongue to rest at the bottom of your mouth. Relax your tongue, relax the back of your throat, relax your neck, relax your right shoulder and your left shoulder, relax your right upper arm and your left upper arm, relax your right elbow and your left elbow, relax your right forearm and your left forearm, relax your right wrist and your left wrist. Relax your right thumb and your left thumb. Relax your right pointing finger and the left pointing finger. Relax the right middle finger and the left middle finger. Relax your right ring finger and the left ring finger. Relax your right pinky and your left pinky. Just taking your attention to your heart area. Relax your chest and your heart area. Going down, relaxing your diaphragm and your solar plex area. Relax the top of your abdomen. Relax your belly button and that whole abdominal area. Relax the pelvic area. Relax your right thigh and your left thigh. Relax your right knee and your left knee. Relax your right shin and your left shin. Relax your right ankle and your left ankle. Relax your right foot and your left foot. Relax the sole of your foot, your right foot, and the sole of your left foot. And relax your right heel and the left heel. And now your whole body is completely relaxed. You just continue to breathe and relax. Breathe and relax. And again, if there's any other thought, feeling, or emotion or sensation that comes up for you about grief or loss, just take note of it. Is there anything else coming up for you about a grief or loss? And just take a moment to allow your awareness to be soft, open, and curious. And ask the question, what is it in me most needs of healing? What is it in me that most needs healing? And just think, feel, or imagine that you have everything inside you and around you that you need for healing. And let's just go a little bit deeper to allow that what needs to be healed to be healed. So I'd ask you to allow my words to be like soft background sounds, as if you were lying on a beach, hearing the waves in the background. You do not have to focus on the meaning of the words. You can trust that you will hear whatever it is you need to hear. And I will ask you to let my words become your words. I invite you to become aware of the underlying true nature that dwells within you. Your underlying true nature is an unchanging, heartfelt equanimity or presence that is always present amidst every circumstance of your life. It is this true nature that gives you the strength to meet, greet, welcome, and respond to every situation that you face during your lifetime. Everything you meet can be a pointer to your authentic ground of equanimity, your inner self, or your soul. It is always awake and knows the perfect response to every situation. For this we affirm the following resolve: I am awake, I am aware, and I welcome every perception as a messenger that is guiding me back home to my authentic ground of being. Now quietly affirm this resolve to yourself as I say, and repeat after me in your mind's eye. I am awake, I am aware, and I welcome every perception as a messenger that is guiding me back home to my authentic ground of being. And I'm just going to envision, you can think, feel, or imagine that your whole body has been surrounded and enveloped by this golden white divine light, a light emanating from a very, very high source. And just know that this golden white divine light is a light of love, a light of compassion, a light of mercy, a light of hope, a light of healing, and also a light of protection. And with this light, just focus your mind, your heart, and your soul on this presence that you might be feeling that's emanating from this golden white light. And again, I would ask you to allow my words to become your words. We'll now say the following prayer, which you can recite silently to yourself after me. Through your blessing, grace, and guidance, through the power of the light that streams from you, may all my negative actions, destructive emotions, and blockages be cleansed, purified, and removed. May I know myself forgiven. May all the harm I may have thought and done, may I be granted this purification. And just imagine thousands of brilliant rays of light streaming out towards you, emanating from this very, very high source. And imagine these brilliant rays of light penetrating you, purifying you, healing you, and blessing. And sowing in you the seeds of healing, the seeds of love and compassion, and allow you to do the healing that you need to do. And just to take it a little bit further, just think, feel, or imagine that there's dazzling light, crystal white bursts out from this very high source and enters the energy center in your forehead. This then fills your whole body, and this white light represents the blessing. It cleanses all the negative actions, destructive emotions, and blockages you have accumulated through the actions of the body. And it purifies all the subtle channels of your mind-body system and gives you the blessing of this very high source, and opens to you the realization that compassionate energy is what's manifesting in everything. And again, a stream of ruby red light shines out from this high source and enters the energy center at your throat, filling your entire body. And this red light represents the blessing of speech, and it cleanses all the negative actions, destructive emotions, and blockages you have accumulated through harmful speech, and purifies your mind-body system, and opens you to the realization of the radiance and the nature of this high source. And finally, a stream of light, shimmering blue light, the color of lapis lazuli, bursts out from the heart of this source and into the energy center of your heart and fills your whole body. And this blue light represents the blessing of the mind and the heart. And it cleanses all the negative actions, destructive emotions, and blockages you have accumulated through the negative activity of your mind and your heart. And it gives you the blessing and opens you to the realization of the purity of the essence of this very high source. And just imagine that you are now completely purified and completely healed by these lights streaming from this very high source. Consider your very body itself now commencing that process of healing. Just continue just to breathe and relax. Allow yourself just to be bathed in the light of healing. When you're ready, slowly open up your eyes and just allow the light of the room to come in. Take a deep cleansing breath, bringing the energy back into your body. You feel like you can just raise your hands and just stretch through your fingers, out through your toes, wiggle your fingers and your toes. Yeah, just bring them down. So, any last comments or feedback anyone has? Questions?
Is it too?
It's fine with me. It's okay. Yeah. On. So how was that? You can be honest.
Do you have that available at all? Or is it from something?
Yes. So there's different parts, but a lot of that is from the the book of the Tibetan book of the dying, living and dying, by, say it louder?
Must be a Rinpoche.
Yeah. Yeah, anyways, it's an excellent book, and there's a number of practices in there, and this is, especially the one to the light, is one I found very, very powerful and very healing. You know, then there's the body relaxation, that's another one, just allow you to really deeply relax.
And this will be on the website if you want to listen to it
Yeah.
again, so that it'll be part of the recording.
Yeah, yeah. So these aren't necessarily mine, these are all just like a compilation of different techniques that I've learned, and the feedback that I've received on them, that people find them, you know, that they really find them healing. So, and different ones speak to different people. So the first one part we did is just the breathing, from the nostril breathing, from the tip of the nostril to the eyebrow center. It's actually, in yoga, you'll learn that when you put like a pressure point on that point between your eyebrows, it actually relaxes. Literally, it calms the nervous system, relaxes the mind, and relaxes the whole body. So just by breathing into this point, it's really powerful. So that's all we were doing there, is really allowing a relaxation, deeper relaxation. And then the first part, where we just kind of went in, and as you're breathing, just, you know, think, feel, or imagine that each vertebrae in your back is slowly rising up as you inhale, and then coming down as you exhale. This allows you to go inside your body. So it's a technique that you want people to not be out there, but be in here. So it gets us inside the body. Then the nostril breathing, you know, allows for some calming and relaxing of the mind. And then the one that we did, the body scan, basically going from the top all the way down, it's a really deep relaxation. It's a good one if you ever want to fall asleep as well. And then once you're in that really relaxed state, then being able to, you know, suggest something like this healing prayer, where you can really release these blockages and the things that kind of stuck, and that can be a very good technique to release some of that negative stuff within us. And then the light is very powerful, and especially my own experience is that I broke my knee, shattered my knee skiing about 20 some odd years ago, and somebody taught me the notion of being able to use healing white light to focus it on the knee. 8 weeks later, I climbed a mountain, and 12 weeks later, I got an x-ray on it, and the doctor looked at it, and the thing that my knee had been smashed. I mean, literally in lots of pieces. There wasn't even a crack in it. You'd never seen anything like that. That healed so completely. And all I did is every day is just imagine that this healing white light was coming in on it, and putting that energy and that thought in it, and that I imagined it being healed, and it was amazing. And right now, this knee is actually stronger than the other knee, and I still ski. So it's a powerful thing. It can really help to heal. And then the other lights, the lapis lazuli and the red, and you know, that ruby red light and the crystal light, these are all energies that are available for healing, for deep healing.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's a very interesting session
Just
on
one second.
healing anticipatory grief.